Okay, coming to you live from Austin, Texas, here at OSCON. I'm here with Mr.
Hi, I'm Cote.
I'm Barton George, and we are blessed with the one, the only, Jono Bacon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Well, so you just finished, pre-OSCON, you had a whole show that you've been doing now for about 10 years. What is it, and how did it go?
So it's called the Community Leadership Summit, and it's basically, it's an event, it's an unconference primarily, but there's some keynote content that brings together community managers and leaders from a variety of different industries. The idea was, when I started doing it, was people were joining companies to do community management and leadership, and they were doing this in open source projects, but it was pretty unstructured. There wasn't a lot of kind of workflow and methodology around that, and I wanted to run this event to essentially try to solve that problem. So people get together, they have conversations, some of those conversations are documented, they go out there, and it's been nice seeing kind of things growing and evolving over the time that it's been running.
So beyond tech, what are some of the other industries that are working with communities now, getting wise to the community?
All over the place. Yeah, I mean there's consumer products that people are building. You've got documentation, government, compliance areas. We've seen a lot of growth inside of companies who will bring in community, principles and open source principles inside the walls of a company. We're starting to see media organizations starting to do more of this as well. So, back when we started doing CLS, Community Leadership Summit, it was a very open source heavy kind of crowd because it's before OSCON. But it's been great to see that those kinds of the core tenets of what community is are actually broadened out to a bunch of different industries now. Yeah.
So I've got a load of questions, but I don't want to.
Yeah, well, how does that how does that branch out into other industries in the sense of, like, you're saying something interesting that, like, I don't know, back in the mid 2000s, like, it would be obvious, like, hey, it's open source stuff, community, blah blah blah. What's the GPL versus the EPL? Like, I mean, I'm just making fun of it, obviously. But the topic list was, while you had to talk about it with people a lot, it was sort of like known, if you will, and I'm curious, like, as it spreads maybe beyond open source, what's the nature if you go talk to, like, I don't know, a big government agency, like, let's say you went to DHS, and they were
is that actually one of the things you do these days? Do you go on site to customers and
so that's
and like what are the things they're asking, and kind of like the tactics you're giving them?
So that's what I'm a consultant, and I work with companies around community strategy.
Right.
And what's interesting is that in almost all cases, the conversation starts out as, we see the value of communities and engagement and ecosystems in the world. We know it's important. We've seen value elsewhere, and other companies deriving a lot of value from it. We have no idea how to build this. So it always starts out from that angle. And what I like to do, first of all, is to try and understand within that, like, what are the themes of the things that you really want to accomplish? Because one of the things I've learned over the course of my career is people often think they're solving the same problem, but they're actually not. And it's important to, first of all, get people cognitively on the same page. Because the thing about community management and ecosystems is that it's really fundamentally cross-functional. It involves engineering and marketing, and it involves product, and invariably there's a sales connection. And the problem with a lot of companies is that what they do is they build a product or a service, and they say, oh, and our community's over there. Go to the forum, go check out our social media account, whatever else. And you get a very limited breadth of engagement that doesn't really connect very well with the core of the company. Yeah. So what I like to do is to say, okay, let's first of all define a model that we want to use in how we build this out, and then we do it in a pretty cross-functional way. Because if you don't get those different teams connected into that process, what happens is you build essentially a silo. So, and what happens is that's when you start seeing divisions between companies and communities, where the community's all pissed off because the company seemingly doesn't care, and their only interaction is with a community manager who's paid to care.
Right. I mean, I guess if you go in there and you perfect one team, it's sort of like that situation where, like, now you have two problems.
Right. Exactly.
Like, you got two dual. And I don't know. It's interesting you say that, because, like, in the whatever the role I have, I do kind of management consultancy kind of stuff.
Right.
And you flit about it, and, like, I always hate that situation. You go, it's always like a therapist or a financial advisor. And the first thing they ask you is, like, what are your goals? And my position is always like, that's why I'm here. I don't know what my goals are. If I knew what my goals are, I would be doing them. But I think in my experience it is, when you go talk with large organizations, they often are not, in aggregate, in touch enough with what their goals are And it's almost like kind of an annoying thing. Whatever discipline consulting you're doing, you have to first be like, do you have this baseline of like knowing what you want to do? Because otherwise, I'm happy to take your money, but it's not really going to be that.
And that's the thing. Like, I think the problem I'm not going to profess to be an expert here. I'm coming up to a year full-time consulting. I did it on the side for a long time, so I'm still learning how to be a consultant. But from what I can tell, consultants do one of two things. They either leave the business in a better position than they were in, so they work on real projects, real things, or they provide best practice in education. So you either go in there, you blather on about the best way of doing something, and people find it difficult to attach to something real, or you do real stuff, but you're perpetually paying a consultant to help you with that kind of stuff.
Right, teaching them to fish rather than sort of keeping them going and doing it one point and then,
And it's critical, and it's really important to me that I want to provide both. So what's interesting with me here is it always starts out as this kind of consultancy, community management and strategy piece, and it often then blurs into organizational workflow.
That becomes sort of the Trojan horse or proxy for...
And it shakes it out, because I think what we do is when we start looking at this work, particularly if you don't want to say the community team's over there, if you want to build value across the organization, have them understand it, you then start seeing these deficiencies, and then but then the benefit of that, I think, done well, is that you actually get then a more efficient and a better optimized company. But
So I guess that would be sort of back along these lines is, do you ever go and they say, okay, we really want community and we're going to go put it here, but then the way that the company either explicitly or implicitly operates is we're against transparency. We're all about hoarding things, and you say, we got to take a few steps back, because if you're going to want a community, you got to be okay with transparency. You got to be okay with different people doing different bits and sharing some of these things.
That for me is one of the most interesting elements of this work is, and this may be from a kind of slightly sadomasochistic perspective, is I think what people, this is going to sound really arrogant, but it's not meant to. I think when people say what they want, invariably what they actually want isn't that thing. So like, I see this all the time with particularly executives who will say, for example, we really want community growth, for example. And what they may actually want is not community growth, they want validation in the industry, or they want customers, or whatever it might be. So I think the same applies to those kinds of situations when you start seeing, particularly in companies where they're trying to build community either internally or a large company that's trying to build an external community. You always have someone at the top who really cares about this. This is how they kick off the work. And invariably, like, the people who are on the ground doing the day-to-day business, they really value this kind of stuff, because they come to conferences and they spend time on Hacker News and things like that. The problem is invariably the middle management layer. And that middle management layer are often worried about their patch of land and what it's going to look like. So what I've tried to do is, when we're starting to shift, this is why these themes, in my mind, are so important, because what we do is, if we can all agree on the ultimate goal, then what we can do is, at your middle management level, we can figure out, okay, what are the things that you're worried about, and design how we do this in a way that relieves that worry. It's kind of like, if you tweak your back when we're working out, a good personal trainer will work around the injury. And I tend to think of the same thing with these kinds of, when people have those kinds of concerns. So as an example, I was working with a client recently, and there was one particular individual who didn't like the idea of any kind of outreach inside of the company. And what I determined from that was, his real concern was he didn't want his team to look bad. So I spent a bit of time with him, helping to optimize his bit of that outreach, his bit of that report that went out. And at the end of it, he was like, oh, this is actually really good, because my team looks good now. He just wasn't formulating his team's accomplishments in a way that mapped to that kind of interaction. I think this kind of work is riddled with that kind of stuff. It's like, it's kind of like, I think anyone who's worked with founders in companies knows that founders have great vision and are terrible at execution in many cases. And I think understanding those different personality types then helps us to design, ultimately get to the goal in a way that isn't just like ramming it down someone's throat.
Yeah, people always easily mix up the symptoms versus the disease, and they think about
that's a great way of I've never heard anyone describe it that way.
Well, I'm always trying to think the grimmest analogy that's tasteful.
I'm going to steal that and make it my own.
Well, I think the other thing that one of the things you're talking about is that one of the most valuable things as a community manager, and you having done it for what, a decade?
Yeah,
at Canonical?
I started doing this in about the year 2000. So, well, I started playing with this in 1998, but I had my first job doing this really 2004. So,
Okay.
yeah, it's about a decade.
But some of the biggest skills is being able to understand what motivates people, being able to talk to them in a way that resonates with them.
Right.
And so, what would you say? And obviously, it's a open source space that you're in, and so it's more understanding of how this works. Yeah, what would you say were the three main things that your job description said that you needed to do? In other words, psychotherapist, cat herder, blah blah blah. What were the key roles that you would say that you had as a community manager?
It's a great question. I mean, I'd say one piece is definitely, well, there is like the job description and then my interpretation of what I think we should do. I think I have a bit of a different definition of what a community manager should be than a lot of job descriptions that I see. Because in my mind, a good community manager looks at community as an experience that you go on. Like this woman who I used to work with at X Prize, she ran all of our events. She ran amazing events, and she said, the minute you step into that venue, that's when your experience begins. And I want to ensure quality at every step of that. Like she really thought about every detail, and so that's one of the reasons why she was so good at that. And to me, it's the same thing with a good community manager: is that you should look at like what do we want to accomplish in the community? How do we break that into different personas, like writing software, doing documentation, doing translations? And then how do we look at the on-ramp and how you grow and how you incentivize those people? So it's a real journey. The challenge is that I think a lot of the community management job descriptions that I see is like write blog posts, do social media, go to meetups and swing your arms around. And that stuff is really valuable, but I see that as a component in that wider in that wider journey. So I think for me, one element is definitely that is the design of that experience. The second thing I think is a day-to-day being the point of contact or being the person who the community trusts.
Right.
Like to me, the people who do this kind of work really well that I respect, like they can go out and hang with the community and go to lunch and go and have a beer in the evening, but they can also sit down and talk with the management of the company, understand their goals, and be able to translate. To me, it's like impedance translation between lots of different personality types. And then I'd say the third thing, and this is going to sound a little bit Tony Robbins.
As if you haven't been talking that way already, but no.
I'll take that as both a criticism
and a compliment.
He has way better bone structure than I do.
Well, there you go.
I think part of it is, frankly, this is such a young industry that it's just always being willing to say, I'm crap at this, and I'm going to get better. And that's, for me, has been one of the most rewarding elements, is sometimes the biggest mistakes can be the biggest opportunities. And because that, in my mind, community management is that connective tissue between people and technology, it's so misunderstood and so like it's not understood well enough that we make mistakes all the time. And that's one of the goals of the community leadership summit, is to get people together to share those stories, and then we can figure out how to
in an agile way to learn from.
Yeah, because that's how we get better. Screw it up
and then learn from it.
I'm just making excuses for all of my mistakes.
Well, exactly. And you're doing it now. You're in there yet.
So you know your disease well, so you can surround the appropriate symptoms.
Like this.
The pathology of it all. The pathology of community management.
Whoa, you're busting out the
I see
Greek.
a blog post.
I feel like there's like a Taschen art book in you.
Oh,
With just an art book.
Wow, that's a pull. I'm gonna go. What was it, Granite? I need to go subscribe to the old magazine. Granta. There you go.
There you go. We're getting pretty highbrow here.
Yeah,
Well, I think that's all the time we had with you, right? You got any other?
Unfortunately, I got to run and to another meeting, but yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Jono Bacon, always a pleasure.
Yeah.
Until next time, thank you for joining us.